His name is Dracula.
And I want to kill the cursed thing.
The legend of Dracula, one of the most iconic horror villains, has found various outlets in fiction ever since Bram Stoker's unforgettable novel in 1897. From the first Dracula movie in the 1930s, there have been various attempts to bring this evil incarnate to life over the years. The Last Voyage of the Demeter is a recently released horror movie that captures a small part of the original novel's storyline. It traces Dracula's journey from Transylvania to London while he is on board a doomed ship Demeter, and we get to witness the harrowing journey of the crew members who find themselves up against a far superior enemy. In this video, we will try to explore this all-new version of Dracula who is shown in his monstrous form throughout the movie. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you, and let's begin. How does Dracula end up in the Demeter? Just to give you some context, the movie opens on a rainy night where a ship named Demeter was washed ashore in England. The cops investigating the site comes across the captain's log, which has a record of the nightmarish past few weeks that the crew members had to go through. With no survivors on board, the fate of those on board is already known, but we soon get to see how it all started. 4 weeks before the wreckage washes up on shore, Demeter makes port in Varna, where they pick up some cargo to be transported to London. There are some private packages to be delivered, which include several large wooden crates, and these were transported by locals from Romania. The captain of the Demeter also wants to recruit a few crew members for the journey ahead, but the locals are hesitant after finding a strange dragon mark on the crates, which they believe to be bad luck. Dracula, the evil near-immortal entity, planned to travel to London in one of these crates, hidden from public sight and sunlight. It was the perfect plan because he had enough prey on board to sustain himself till he reached London. The crew members had no clue when they were boarding the crates marked for London, and by the time they found out, it was a little too late. Why was Dracula traveling to London, and what does he look like? Dracula has been residing in his home country for hundreds of years, feeding on the people and their fears. However, over the centuries, the country grew barren of people, and there were not enough feeding opportunities for the beastly being. He wanted to visit England for a new batch of unsuspecting prey, and the rich and flourishing life in the country would make sure that Dracula wouldn't go hungry for a very long time. The stowaway girl who was rescued by the doctor on board also revealed similar reasons for Dracula's travel to London. She kept warning everyone about the doom that would be spelled across London if this evil force managed to reach there. The girl was being taken on board solely for the purpose of Dracula's emergency feeding requirements, and she was already contaminated with his evil blood. The appearance of Dracula in the film is a slight departure from the usual versions of Dracula that we come across. This Dracula is not seen in his human form even once, and he relishes his monstrous bat-like appearance. It is a terrifying sight as his glowing eyes peek through the dark and his bald head makes the sharp bat-like ears stand out. His behavior is almost feral and animalistic, and he is relentless when it comes to the pursuit of his prey. He has sharp claws on his arms and limbs, and his deadliest weapon is probably the sharp and lethal set of teeth, which he uses to land a lethal bite on his victims. He is remarkably fast and agile, and there have been several times in the movie when the crew members failed to shoot him with their guns because of how quickly he moved. Of course, Dracula has the ability to fly, and his foldable wings are used whenever required. This appearance is a great throwback to one of the first representations of Dracula in the movies, where he was shown as this beastly entity. The novelized version mostly portrays a gentleman with sharp and deadly canines who can transform into his monstrous form, but the movie simply sticks to the scarier version. He starts off a slaughter fest, which only ends with the climax of the movie, and there is a promise of a lot more in store. Dracula begins the journey by brutally killing every animal on board, and after getting strong enough, he moves on to the human victims who are incapable of fighting back the ultra-powerful Monstrous Dracula. How does Dracula infect people with his bite? It is known that Dracula needs to regularly feed on people in order to sustain himself. The longer he goes hungry, the weaker he gets, and he planned his travel to London accordingly. He rationed the crew members carefully for the entire journey, picking on his victims with accuracy and relentlessness. After sailing for London, one of the crates in the cargo hold falls and breaks. The newly recruited doctor on board, Clemens, investigates the matter and discovers that a nearly dead young woman is buried in the dirt. He performs regular blood transfusion, suspecting some kind of deadly infection in her blood, and slowly she gets better. However, it is soon revealed that the young lady named Anna is far from healed. She tells the crew members that she hails from a village near Dracula's original residence, and she has been used by the evil monster to nourish himself. This is probably the reason why she was brought on board in the first place. Towards the end of the movie, it is also brought to our attention that one cannot possibly heal from Dracula's bite and the infection that it brings forward. Anna decides to sacrifice herself before she turns into a mindless, bloodthirsty monster just like her attacker. When a crew member named Olgarin is bitten by Dracula, his behavior soon turns erratic and he has to be tied up carefully. Somehow he manages to free himself and goes after the captain's grandson, Toby. Finally, he is burned to ashes after being exposed to sunlight, a feature that is known to affect Dracula and vampires in general. Toby has a similar fate after being bitten by Dracula, and before his lifeless body is tossed into the sea, the young boy shows signs of a violent undead self and attacks the captain. Basically, one would consider himself lucky if Dracula's attack kills him instantly, because the injuries can go on to become a lot worse. After the corrupt blood enters a human bloodstream, the person loses control over himself and ends up in a zombie-like state with a thirst for blood and violence. How Anna was an exception for so long is not explained in the movie, but it might have something to do with her origins. She comes from the land of the Dracula and she might have more immunity than the others, even though fate eventually catches up to her. How strong are Dracula's wings? Why couldn't he just fly to London? After a desperate last attempt by the last surviving crew member and the stowaway girl, Dracula seemed to be doomed for a watery grave just like they had planned. However, the beast still found his way to London, as is revealed in the last scene of the movie. It can be assumed that since the ship was only about a day away from the shore, he flew the rest of the distance in the cover of the night. This makes us wonder just how powerful are his wings. There is a scene where the cook on board tries to make an escape attempt on the lifeboat. As he steers away from the Demeter, Dracula suddenly flies to the boat and attacks him. Clearly, he doesn't have a problem flying shorter distances in very quick time, so why did he need a long journey on the Demeter in order to reach his destination? The answer probably lies in one of his most evident weaknesses more than anything else. Dracula is not fond of the sun, and it is quite likely that a flight from his hometown to London would take away too much time and expose him to the sun. There are no covers and hiding spots for him in the open seas, and hence, a ship is a safer option. Besides, Dracula did have a foolproof plan for his journey, so probably did not have to take the trouble of seeking out the riskier flight option. How can Dracula be killed? While Dracula does seem to be near invincible and immortal, there are a few weaknesses that can be exploited by the mortals in order to kill him. If Bram Stoker's novel has taught us anything, it would take a lot of garlic, wooden stakes, and knowledge about Dracula to get the better of him. It is said that when Dracula is in his death sleep, recharging himself before the night, he is extremely vulnerable. A wooden stake through the heart during this time would get the job done. Another evident weakness in this bat monster is how he hates sunlight. Even the movie The Last Voyage of the Demeter explores this side of Dracula, where he avoids stepping out in the sun and the crew members are safe during the day. Unfortunately, in the movie, they could never find him during his death sleep moments, and all search attempts failed to locate him. In the movie, Anna manages to use a part of the mask to crush Dracula, but even the lethal blow seems to be ineffective. While Clemens and Anna briefly think that the monster has been contained, we soon realize that it is far from true. There are moments where Dracula is shot at, but clearly bullets have little to no impact on this incredibly powerful monster. He could also be lured out into the sun, and then he would be burned to death, a point that has been exploited in many movies before. Various other versions of Dracula have encountered more creative deaths, such as the use of cross-shaped candlesticks, impaled by a golden cross, dissolving on a church altar, and even a werewolf bite to the throat. Thus, while he is undoubtedly a fearsome horror icon, Dracula is far from immortal, and it only takes the right pen and the right will to get the job done. Marvelous Verdict, a Dracula movie with an alien theme. In space, no one can hear you scream. Neither can they when you're stuck in the middle of the ocean in a sailboat with Dracula on board. The level of desperation and paranoia will remind you of similar claustrophobic horror movies such as Alien, where the danger is constantly lurking nearby only to grab an opportunity to prey on the helpless victims. The crew members and their resources are no match for the supreme powers of this vampire monster, and it is a hopeless cause from the very beginning. The acting performances are quite remarkable, and everyone from Liam Cunningham to David Dastmalchian to Corey Hawkins have perfected their roles. The fast-paced narrative never allows a drop in the adrenaline high, and the ending shapes the way for a sequel along the way. The monstrous Dracula in the movie looks truly terrifying, and the mysterious entity shows up just enough to not make his appearance monotonous. In fact, the fear of the viewers was shared by the cast members as well, and Liam Cunningham even revealed in an interview that everyone was intimidated by the appearance of Dracula, even on the sets. It is a smart idea to reimagine Dracula in his monstrous form, where he is more of a bat monster than a human, and this can be a great way to keep things fresh even after a century. We hope to see more of Dracula in the coming years, and if such adaptations are appreciated by the audience, and there can surely be many more to follow. If you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.